Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to learn how to use AWS Amplify with Gatsby. Now this is a code alone project, so I will show you every code line from start to finish. Now here's the agenda. We are going to build a Nodes application in Gatsby. Then we will host it on AWS using Amplify CLI. We will also use Amplify libraries together with Amplify CLI to add a user login and also to connect with an AppSync backend which uses a DynamoDB as its database. Now here's a quick preview of our website that we are going to build. So we have two sections, public nodes and private nodes. Now in the public node section, these are static content. Now this content may be coming from a CMS like WordPress, Contentful, or maybe GitHub. Gatsby will build the content from those sources and show only the HTML here. But the private node section is the dynamic part of it. So here we have a user login. Users can log into the application and they can create their own nodes. The content will be persisted on a DynamoDB database and it has a AppSync API or GraphQL API. Hey, before we start, my name is Manoj. I create videos to solve problems when you start using AWS in your production projects. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more videos just like this. Alright guys, so let's get started by installing Gatsby CLI and Amplify CLI globally. To install Gatsby, let's type npm i-g, so we are installing it globally, gatsby-cli, and I'm going to add a version as well. So if you are following along, there won't be any conflicts when these versions got bumped. So this is going to install Gatsby CLI globally. I'm going to exit out because I already have it. So once it is installed, you can just say check gatsby-v. Then you should see 2.12. I don't mind about the patch version. Okay, then let's install Amplify CLI in the same time globally. npm i-g at aws/amplify-cli and use this version for this tutorial if you are following along. 4.21 and hit enter. And I already have Amplify installed, so I'll exit out. So after installing Amplify, you can just check Amplify-v. So I have this 4.21 version. Okay. So next, let's create a Gatsby project from a starter template. So we are going to use the Hello World starter template. So in order to do that, type Gatsby new. Then you can provide a name for your application. I will just say Nodes app because this is going to be a small Nodes application project. And then type http://gatsby.com/gatsby-js/gatsby-hello-world. Okay, hit enter. So that will clone that repo into my Nodes app folder and install the dependencies. So then we can just start it. Okay, now I will go into cd Nodes app folder and then I will open it in Visual Studio Code by typing code space period and hit enter. And here, if you go to package.json, you should see the develop command. So here I'm gonna run Gatsby develop, or you can run npm run develop as well. So that will in turn run Gatsby develop. Then we can actually see what this Hello World projects gives us. Okay, so it's built. So you can control click or command click localhost 8000, or you can just type it in, and then you should see the Hello World message printed out. Okay, so this is a very good starting point for us. So let's go ahead and create a simple note-taking application. And I will put the code in a GitHub repository and share the link with you in the description as well. Or you can just code along with me. Okay, in order to start, we can see under pages we have just index.js Gatsby page. So this is what I was rendering the hello world message. So what we are going to do here is we are going to create two pages. So one pages is for public nodes. So it doesn't have any kind of authentication to view the content in that particular page. But there's another page called private nodes. In order to access that, you need to authenticate. So for that, we are going to use Amplify. And in that page, we'll add the ability to create nodes and save nodes in AWS AppSync Backend and load the nodes once we are properly authenticated. So first, let's go ahead and create our public page. So it's nothing but, some, let's say have a H1 public nodes, and let's have a paragraph, and I will add some lorem ipsum paragraph into this, and let's use a layout component, and we're going to create it. So let's wrap that around the layout component. Let me put it here, and I will do and I will do a small formatting, right? So we're going to go ahead and create this layout. So for that, I'm gonna create a new directory up here. It's not there, but at the root level, called components, and there I will add a file called layout.js. So this is a normal React component. Import React from React, and then let's create a constant and call it layout. And we just return some JSX here, and at the bottom we will just export default it layout. So our layout will contain a navbar up top. So let's create another component in a bit, but we'll reference it right here. And then let's create a div. So in this div, this is our container div. So we'll have a class called container, and then inside that we will pass the props here. So all the childrens will be rendered over here. Okay, and we'll have some wrapper div as well. So let me get them into this parent div element. So now let's go ahead, create this navbar, and also we have to create the CSS. So we'll start with the CSS. I'm going to create another folder up here for styles, right? And here let's create a file called style.css. And here I will just have the body margin set to 0. And let's add our container class. So this we will have a max width of 750 pixel, margin 0 auto, so it will be like centralized or like center. Text align, again we will center line all the text. Okay, so this class is there, but now let's go ahead and create this nav component as well. So this is our navbar, navbar.js. So navbar is very simple. First let's import React from React, and I will add the navbar component. So here let's just return some JSX, and at the bottom let's export it. Okay, so the navbar will have a wrapper div, and with a class name called navbar wrapper, and under that we'll have UL, another list, right? And this UL also has a class name, we'll call it navbar, and then we'll have some list items. And in this list item, now these are the menu points, like we can click around. So one menu point is the public nodes, so we should have a link to get to the public nodes. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and import the link from Gatsby. In Gatsby, the link is inside this Gatsby library. I will just paste in the link here. So link. So we'll call this link public notes as the text, and that should goes to the root directory. So the root file or the root page, which is the index page, is gonna be our notes page or public notes page rather. So let me just copy this and then create another link for private nodes, and let's have a link called notes. So then now we have already imported it. So let's go ahead and do npm run develop. So we got an import error. So in index.js, so I haven't imported the layout. So let's go ahead and import it. Import layout from. Uh, so right now that is in components. So by the way, we'll add this component folder into the source folder. So let me just drag it and add it into the source folder. So we have our component inside the source folder. Hmm. So then what we can do here is we can say components layout, right? So because component layout is here. And in the same time, the navbar, I have to import it in the layout. So let's go ahead and do that as well. Navbar from navbar because it's right here in the same level. So now let's see if there's anything happening. There you go. So I have a public nodes, private nodes, and this thing. So if I click private node, so it's trying to go to this URL / node, but there's nothing. So the default for node 4 is shown. So let's go ahead and do a little styling here on the public and private nodes. Now these are very basic styling, guys. Now we have this navbar wrapper and navbar classes. So let's come here and I'm gonna add dot navbar wrapper for the background. Let's add triple F 7C9. So that's kind of a yellow color, very light yellow. Padding, so let's say 5 pixel. Add navbar class as well. So this is applied to the unordered list. So the list style, so let's set to none. So there won't be any dots or anything. Then display, instead of inline, it should be flex. So we can handle the UI bit better. So justify content. So I'm gonna say space evenly, and then font size. So let's set it to 18 pixel, and font family, I will just add sans serif. Okay. So let's see if there's any changes. Oh, I have to import the style CSS file right out to our navbar. So right now I need to go two directories up and then style.css. So in the same time I will import style to our layout page as well. So let's see, where am I? One page, then two page. Okay, looks good. There you go. You see, it's nothing fancy. Okay, so let's create our private page. So let's go ahead and open up pages, and I will create a new page. Let's call it notes.js because in the navbar we add the path that's notes, so it has to be the same name. So Gatsby will route to this page automatically. Okay, so in this page up top, let's go ahead and import React from React, and let's call this notes page. And at the bottom I exported it. Okay, here let's return some JSX. So this is our main notes page. So everything will be under layout. It's not automatically up importing. Let's see. So inside that, let's call layout. So we have to import layout, component / layout, and inside it we'll have an h1. Let's call it my personal notes. So I'm not going to create multiple React components. Instead, I will have just spit out all the form and the rendering of the notes in the same page. So if you like, you can just go ahead and then create forms and componentize it. So I'll first have a form, and so this is where I will create a new node. So on submit, so we'll attach a handle submit function, so which we haven't created yet. And then let's add a p tag. So inside that p tag, I will add one input, and it has this text type. It's type text. Sorry. And then let's have a placeholder. Let's say for that type title, and let's add some styles. Let's say I will add some inline style this time, 50% width, and font size of 15 pixel. And let's have a value. So for the value, so we'll leave it empty at this moment. So we'll handle our state using use states React hook in a bit. So on change, so again we have to write some logics here, but let's leave it right here and we'll close out this input. Okay. So by the way, let's go ahead and add that variable to hold our state for nodes. So I'm going to create a constant, and let's call it nodes, and this is our set nodes, and then I'm going to use use state. I think it has already imported it. Let me just remove this use state. The initial state will have an object where the title is empty and the body is also empty, right? So let's get the use state up right here. Use state. Okay, now let's rather call this a new node because this is a new node, and let's call it set new node. And I'm attaching the value to the form input right here, new node. And on change, so let's go ahead and set that new node value. Set new node, and inside that, so I'm destructuring this new node first, and then I'm going to add the title value because this is the title input, right? So I destructure the new node and then add the title as get the value from the target dot value. Okay, let me do a quick formatting. Cool. Save that. So in the same time, I'm gonna go ahead and copy this whole thing and then paste that again. So this is for the title, and now this is for the body, right? So instead of a input, let's say this text area. Okay. So instead of type, let me say the rows. How many rows do we need? We'll add 4. We'll say it's only 4. And for the width, let's set it to 70, and 15 pixel is fine. And here, like the new node is an object, right? See, so it has the title and body. So I have to just say this is title, new node dot title, and I'm binding the value of new node dot body here. So on change, again, I'm setting the same new node. So I destructure the existing object, and instead of title, this is body. I'm setting the body value. Okay, finally, I will go ahead and add another p tag. So this is our submit button. So input, okay, this is the type of submit, and I will add some style as well. Again, some inline style. So I'm a little bit lazy now. 30%, and let's say the height is about 30 pixel for this. And let me break this down to the next line, and we will add the value as add node. So this is the button text. Okay, let me do a little formatting. Cool. So when you do the submission, it's gonna go ahead and call upon handle submit function. So let's create that function. So outside, just type const handle submit, and let's create a small function. So it's accepting the event. So first I will prevent defaults. Then we can try catch any errors, console.log any errors. I mean, here basically what we are doing here is as soon as a new node is added, then we try to update it in the database and update the state of this component. So if it is failing, then as an error in creating the node. So before we save anything, we'll check whether these values are already available. So we are binding the new node variable. So we'll just check if new node dot title dot length is available. Either new node title or body is not available, then we will just return it because we can't create a node without a title and a body. Then if they're available, I can just create node in uh, backend. Now we will create another state variable. So this time let's call it nodes. Sorry, nodes. So this will have the list of nodes and it's going to be an array. So use state and that is an array. So this is the array that we're going to add the new nodes. After we save it, we will iterate and show it below. Right? So after creating it in the backend, so this is to do, need to do. And after that, we're going to say set nodes. And here I will add the node, the new node to the front, and then I will just destructure the existing nodes. So we'll add that nodes to the in front of that array. So I know I haven't tested this yet, but let's iterate over these nodes and see if we see something in the UI. So under forms, I will do a separator and add a separator there, the horizontal line, and then we'll just check. I will just oops, what is this? Nodes dot map. So this is the nodes list that we are adding the new nodes into. So we are going to map over it, and we get node and index. So let's create a div inside that. So in that div, we'll have the index as the key. And as the body, I'm just going to add the node title in h2 tag. So node.title, okay, and then body in a paragraph tab, node.body. And then I will add another separator. So let's see if this all works. I'm sure we will see some errors. So apparently it's building fine. So let's come here and then do a refresh. Okay, I will go to private nodes. Very nice. So I will see it. Let me take an inspect element and see if everything is doing well. So I don't see any errors at this moment. I'll type a node. Let's say my first node. This is the first node. I will add it. There you go. And it just added. Very nice. I will add another one. Well, I want to empty this after I added it. So let's quickly come here. And after the nodes is been set, I will do set new node and I will set the title to empty again and body to again empty string. Okay, this should do. So let me do a refresh. My first node content. There you go. And I will add the second node body at that. Very nice. So it is added on top of here. Well, right now, so we have two pages, public nodes and the private nodes. So at the moment, there's no any restrictions. Anyone can access the public nodes and private nodes. So now let's use Amplify. And first, let's host this site. So in order to host the site in AWS, so let me stop the server first. Well, in order to add hosting, we need to initialize an Amplify project and then add hosting to that. But before that, we need to configure Amplify. You can do so with Amplify configure. I hit enter, then you can easily follow along the wizard. I think it's self-explanatory, so I'm gonna skip that part. So it's gonna automatically open up your AWS console. Then you can log in, and then the rest of the steps you can easily follow along. Okay, I'm not gonna configure it again because I have already configured it. So let me clear that up. And after you have configured it, so you can then type amplify in it to create an amplify project. Okay, Notes app is fine for the project name. The stage is dev is fine. VS Code is the IDE I'm using. It's JavaScript and it has automatically picked up it's a React because this is a Gatsby. And then The source directory, of course, it is src. The build directory, the distribution directory is not build because it's public in Gatsby. So let's change it to public and hit enter. The build command, it is not npm run script build. So let's see what that is. If I go to package.json, the build is Gatsby build. So we can just type npm run build. So it will in turn execute Gatsby build. Okay. And the starter command, in order to start it, so we'll just use the same start command, npm run start. That will run npm develop. So that will run Gatsby develop behind the scene. Hit enter. So that's it. So it's gonna go ahead and create it in CloudFormation. Then when you are configuring, if you configured an AWS profile, you can select a profile. If not, you can just select no here, and then it will use your default profile. So in this case, I'm going to use a profile. I hit Y and I pick my profile. Then it's going to go ahead and provision all the resources, the initial resources on cloud. So initial configuration is done. So now I can go ahead and add a category. So the category that we are going to add is hosting, because we want to host our application before anything, right? So what I'm going to do is, so I will type amplify add hosting and hit enter. Then it will ask me whether I want to use Amplify console. So here I can set up a continuous deployment pipeline with custom domain and everything. So this is exactly I'm going to go ahead and do. So I will pick this one. Then I can select whether I want this continuous deployment with Git place. When you do a commit to the Git repository, automatically it will start the deployment, or whether I want to do it manually using amplify publish command. So I have a video on how to do this continuous deployment with Git based deployment flow. I'll put a link below, but for this demo, I'm going to go ahead and select manual deployment. Okay, so I can publish my changes with amplify publish. So let's do that. So that will build my Gatsby project and get the distributed content or the build content that is inside the public directory. And let me say yes first, and then upload it to S3 bucket and provide us an endpoint to access it. Okay, so it's completed and it spit out the URL that we can access the website. So let me command click onto this. So there we go. Let me zoom in just a little bit. So very nice. So we have public nodes and we have our private nodes, and we can type something and then that get added as well. But if we refresh it, everything is gonna go away because we are not persisting anything. So the next step is to protect this private nodes route with authentication. So how are we going to do that? So that's very easy. So we are just going to add amplify auth category. Let me show you how exactly that can be done. I type amplify add auth, right? So this is for authentication. So this is the authentication category. So here it's going to ask, do I want to configure authentication and security configuration? So here what's happening is it's going to go ahead and configure a Cognito user pool. So there I can accept the default configuration of Cognito user pool, or I can set up any social provider like, login with Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all that. Or I can do some manual configuration as well. So here I will just select default configuration. And for the default configuration, I want my users to log in with their username. And I'm not gonna go ahead and do any advanced settings. So I'll select no, I'm done. So that's it. Now, in order to add authentication into this Node.js folder, we need to have two additional libraries installed. So those are AWS Amplify library and AWS Amplify UI React library. So let's install that. Let's use yarn add AWS Amplify at 3.0 space add at AWS dash amplify slash UI dash react at 0.2. So let me hit enter. So AWS Amplify library will allow us to listen for user sign in, sign out events and take decisions or update our states accordingly. And the UI React library for AWS Amplify will allow us to use UI components right out of the box. Okay, those two libraries are installed. Let's build our project and see if we haven't broken anything. Gatsby develop, or you can type npm run develop, Gatsby develop. Okay, so looks like it's building properly. So let me exit out again. Now, in order to add authentication to this page, we need to configure Amplify. So let's configure Amplify here. So first I need to import Amplify from AWS Amplify. And then do you see inside our source folder we have aws-export.js file. Now we haven't yet done an Amplify push after we have added the auth. So once we have done that, the several other attributes will be filled here, like the user pool ID and the identity pool ID. So we'll do that after this. So what we are going to do here is we are going to configure this AWS export.js file with Amplify. So first let's require that file. So let's import it. AWS config from, so that is AWS export, right? So we are referring this file. So after that, I will configure Amplify configure with this AWS config. Okay. And now let's import our AWS Amplify React component. Import from at AWS UI React. So inside this library, we have Amplify Authenticator, and also I will get the Amplify sign out button as well. So now I will use this component as a wrapper under my layout. So let me minimize this content right now. Okay, so we have this at the moment. So under wrapper, under layout, we have our content. So what I'm doing here is I will just wrap this all content with Amplify Authenticator. We get this all, cut it and paste it inside this. Okay, let me do a format. Nice. But before we reflect any changes in our local machine, we need to push our changes. So let's take a terminal and let's do Amplify push. So hosting has no changes, but auth is to be created. So let's accept it, yes. And it's gonna go ahead and update those resources. Alright, so all the resources are now updated in the clouds. Now if I go ahead and look at our AWS export file, do you see we have other configurations like user pool ID, user pool web client ID and all that. So let's go ahead and run our application locally now. Gatsby develop, or you can write npm run develop. Okay, it's built successfully. Let me go to our local version, and as you can already see in the nodes route, we see our sign in button. So if I click on public nodes, there's no any sign in form, but if I click on private nodes, we have this one, and we are no longer seeing our form. Let me do a refresh. So if I want to see my nodes, I have to log in. So let's create a new account. So I'll click create account, say Manoj F, create an account. Then I should receive an email to my email. There I will have a confirmation code. I'll copy that and paste it here. Okay, I got that code and I pasted it here and confirm. And after a confirmation, I am directed to my personal notes. It's very nice. Now I can go back and forth. Since I'm logged in, I'm no longer asked here. But I should be able to logged out as well. So let's get that logged out or sign out button and paste it somewhere. Let me come here and go to notes. And we already required the Amplify sign out button. And here I will add a div, and inside that div, let me take this h1 in that, and under that I will add that Amplify sign out button. But let me add a little bit of styling here. Style, I'll add the display flex and justify content space evenly. Then I will also align a items vertically to center. Let's save it and I'll do a format. Save again, come back. There you go. Then I'll see the sign out button. So very nice. So I can come here and I can click sign out. Then I'll go back to my sign in page. If I want to log in, now I have to log in with my username. And then I'll get to this page. Okay, the next part is to persist these nodes in database. So right now if I add something and if I do a refresh, it's not going to persist. So let's add that as well. Now to add a database and an API, I'm going to use Amplify. So I'll pull up the terminal again. I exit out of this server and I'm going to add a new category. So this time I type Amplify add API. Hit enter. I can choose between GraphQL and REST. I select GraphQL and I can provide a name for the API. Nodes app is fine. And this time I can choose between the authorization for my API. Is it API key? Is it Amazon Cognito user pool? IAM and OpenID Connect. So this time I'm going to choose Amazon Cognito user pool because we already have a user pool with the authentication. The users are already created in the user pool. So we are going to use the very same user pool for the authorization of our backend or the AppSync backend. So let me select Amazon Cognito. So this time it's going to ask, do I want to configure any advanced settings? No, I'm just okay with whatever the existing ones. Do I have annotated GraphQL schema? Now, since we picked the GraphQL API, we have to provide a GraphQL schema. So at this moment, we don't have one. So let's say no. So do I want a guided schema creation? That would be better. So I say yes. Then I can pick one of these examples. So this time I'm going to select the single object with fields because we have nodes, right? Just nodes field. So let me select this one. And do I want to edit it right now? I will say yes and hit enter. And it's going to go ahead and open this file. So it's right here under API nodes app and then schema.graphql. Now I'm editing it. It's not a to do, it's a note. It's more or less the same, I'd say. So note, and instead of name, we have a title. Instead of description, we have a body. And title is string, description is string. So that's fine. And we need to add authorization as well. I want to add an authorization rule. Only the signed in user can see his nodes. He can create his nodes, he can view his nodes, not anyone else's. He can't see anyone else's nodes. So how are we going to add that authorization rule? So that's very easy with Amplify directives. I have to use a directive called @auth. Now we already have an @model directive. So what this @model directive does is it's going to create a DynamoDB table, a database table in DynamoDB, and all our records will be stored there. And it's going to handle all the CRUD operation, create, read, update, delete operations. And this auth directive allow us to define some authorization rules. So we have to pass a little bit more options here. So I'll open up a parenthesis, and under that, let's add rules. And then it's an array, and inside it I will add allow only the owner. So what this rule defines is allow only the owner to create, read and delete the nodes that he created. So that's it. So I'll save this and then I'll come back here. You can see my prompt is waiting for my action. I will hit enter. Now we can do amplify push. Then what Amplify will does is it will create the backend AppSync API and it will create the database table, right? The node table. And also it's going to create all the GraphQL queries and mutations so that we can easily use it from our front-end application. Now in Gatsby, guys, we have a way of using plugins to call upon GraphQL APIs. But I suggest you use this flow that I am following right now because it's going to handle all the authorization out of the box by Amplify. So what I'm doing here is I will clear out the screen and then I will first do Amplify push. Accept it. So it has successfully compiled our GraphQL schema. So this is correct. Then it's inquire, do I need the front end code? Of course I need, because I'm going to call using that. The language, I will choose JavaScript, and all my GraphQL queries, mutation, subscription, they will be stored in source GraphQL subdirectory. I will accept that. I will say create all those possible queries. And the maximum statement that, we don't have any nested queries or so. 2 is enough. Hit enter. Okay, so the GraphQL API is now configured and it has given us the endpoint as well. If you go to AWS export file again, you should see those GraphQL endpoints. Okay, now in order to use the backend API, we have actually two use cases. Now one of that is when we create a new node, we have to save it in the database. So we have to use a mutation or create node mutation. And the second is when we are loading the nodes page, we have to get all the created nodes and show. So we have to query it. So we are going to use list node query. So up top, let's import required API configuration or API imports rather. So I'm going to import API and GraphQL operation from AWS Amplify. Let me just double check whether this is correct. Yeah, GraphQL operation. So that I imported it, and also I'm going to import the mutation and the query. So all my front-end mutations I can access right here. You see, I have a GraphQL folder. So let me go one step up and then go to GraphQL. Then under that we have mutation. So let's go to mutation. And from that mutation, I will get create node mutation. So if I open this file just to show it, so we have create node and it is exported. And it has this GraphQL query already written for us thanks to Amplify code generation. And then I'm going to go ahead and then import the query that we need. So that is also in GraphQL queries, and that query is called list nodes. Save that. So you should find it here, list nodes. So it's gonna get all the items. So with these imports, I can go to my handle submit. Now this is the handler function that get triggered when I click add new node. So here I will say const or rather I will call upon the mutation. So this has to be a async function because I'm going to await the promise, await API dot GraphQL, and then I'm going to use that helper GraphQL operation function, and into that I'm passing the create node mutation, and then I'm going to pass my the new node as the input. So my new node is new node because it has a title and body, and the variable is new node. So all my content is included there, new node. So what I'm doing here is I'm calling the create node mutation, and I'm awaiting that. So I used async here. So that will handle saving part. But we want to load our nodes when loading or when someone navigating this page. For that, I'm going to use effect hook. So up here with use state, I will import both the use effect as well. So above this handle submit function, I will use effect, and in that I'll pass an arrow function, and it is not going to depending upon anything. So it will like execute once when this page is loaded. So what I want to first do here is I want to listen to authentication events. So let me type that out first and explain it a little bit. So up here, I'm going to require or import hub from AWS Amplify as well. So hub, we can subscribe or we can like listen to the events. So let's say hub.listen. So I'm listening to auth events. and then I will get payload. From that, I'm going to structure event and data. So I will check if this event is a signed in event, because I want to make sure the user is signed in. So let's stop here. I'm going to create another use effect hook, because we can have multiple use effect. Let me remove the hub listen part. Here I'm going to fetch all the nodes. So I'll come here and I'll call upon fetch nodes function, which I haven't created yet. So at the bottom, let me call or create that function, fetch nodes, and that's an async function. So there I'm going to try and add a catch block. So this is the place where we will query the data from our API. So I will add a new constant, new nodes data, await. I will use API GraphQL, then use GraphQL operation and pass my list nodes query, the one that we imported up here. So this will return all my nodes data. So I'll get the nodes out of this nodes data by going into nodes data dot list nodes. You have to like drill down a little bit, items. And once you got the nodes, then I will set the nodes state. So with set nodes, we are going to set this nodes array, set nodes to nodes. And if there's any errors, let me do console.log error in fetching nodes. Let me comment out the top use effect just a bit. I'll show you the issue that we have and how to fix it. So I have only one use effect, and that's going to call fetch nodes. And fetch nodes which call upon the list nodes and then gets the nodes and set nodes, the nodes variable with the retrieved nodes. So let's see if this all works fine. Okay, I'll take an inspect element so I can inspect everything. Go to network tabs and let me refresh this. I'll go to private nodes. So can you see where we have the list node query already occurred, and right now it's returning nothing, so items is empty. So let me create a new node, my first node, add one, and you can see my add node query happened and it is successfully created the node. Now if I do a refresh, so it's going to call this list nodes, and then it got that node here, and then it's displaying here. But there's a small problem, so that's what I used the other use effect block, but I thought of showing it to you first. Let me sign out, refresh with the main page, main route. So we have public nodes, and if I go to private nodes, then I get to login, right? So I will log in. Okay, now do you see our use effect is not getting called? Actually, that got already called, but we were unauthenticated by that time, because when we activate this page, the use effect hook get triggered. Let me show you. So in the console, it shows this error in fetching nodes. Do you see this one? Because since by that time we were not authenticated, it was error. Now after we signed in, the use effect is not getting called again. So we need to listen to the authentication events, that means the signed in events, and trigger the get nodes again. So let's see how to do that. So that's what I initially created this use effect, and I thought might not make sense before I show the issue. So I have another use effect block, and here I'm listening to auth events. So if it is the signed in event, so this get called when the user is properly signed in, then we can do some stuff here. I'm going to create another state variable with the use state, and that is called is user logged in, and we'll have a setter for that is user logged in. So this is a boolean and use state. So initial value is false because the user is user logged in is false at the beginning, right? We do a formatting. Then once the user is properly signed in, so I'll go ahead and do set user logged in to true. So then this is user logged in value will be true. After that, what I'm doing here is I will get this is user logged in boolean value, and I'll make that state a dependency for fetch nodes. So do you see there's an array which is empty at the moment. So this is the dependency array. I'll paste this is user logged in. So whenever a change happen, the state change happen to user logged in, then this get executed again. So it will call the fetch nodes again. So let me save this, and this time, as you can see, it automatically just showed the first node. Let's try that out again. I will sign out and let me go to public nodes again and do a refresh. Go to private nodes. Can you see? The GraphQL query got executed. Now I want to add a one small thing, that is a loading icon, not icon, let's say the loading text while the nodes are being loaded. So let's go here, create another state using use state, say loading and set loading. This is our setter. Use state at the beginning it is false. So now I will go to fetch nodes function. So when it starts fetching the things, I will set the loading to true. And once it is completed, I set the loading again to false. Then right here under the form, I will have a condition. If it is loading, then let's show, loading. If not, then just have an empty span here. So let's come here. Do you see the loading? And it was there. So let's sign out and then go to public nodes and do a refresh and see if everything is working properly. So we can see the public nodes, no problem. There's no route guards, anything. But if I go to private nodes, I have to log in. And I think you saw the loading icon just for a split second. So let's add another one. My second node. Add the node. So it is added. I go to public nodes. Since I'm already logged in, I can just see it. Do you see that loading icon just for a split second? There you go, and it is loaded. Very nice. So I can log out. That's it. So this is what I want to show you. And one small thing, you can see all those configured resources. If you just go to Amplify console, you can do that, typing Amplify console. Then it will open up. So it opens up this Amplify console and it navigate to our dev environment or dev stage. You can see the authentication details. You can view your users incognito and the API. So you can view your AppSync and run any GraphQL queries and mutations right in the AppSync console itself. And if you go back to the Notes app, you can see the domain is like at the moment it is set up for Amplify app domain, but you can add a custom environment and then connect your custom domains as well. Alright, so this is what I want to show you guys. So if you enjoyed this video and if you like this type of content, please make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon as well so you will be notified as soon as I released another project or another video cast.